Imagine it's the dawn of the 20th century. The world map is dominated by vast European empires, a landscape of power that seems unshakable. But in the Far East, a storm is brewing, one that will send shockwaves across the globe and forever change the course of history. This is the story of the Russo-Japanese War, the first great war of the modern era, where David met Goliath and Goliath fell. Our story begins with two expanding empires on a collision course. Tsarist Russia, a colossal power stretching from Europe to the Pacific, and Meiji Japan, a nation that had in just a few decades transformed itself from a feudal society into a modern industrial and military force. Both had their eyes on the same prize: control over Manchuria and the Korean peninsula. For Russia, it was about securing a warm water port for its Pacific fleet and expanding its influence. For Japan, it was a matter of national survival, a buffer against Western encroachment and a vital source of resources. The tension was palpable. Russia, confident in its sheer size and European might, viewed Japan with a dismissive, almost colonial arrogance. They saw a small island nation of upstarts. They were about to receive the shock of their lives. Japan, on the other hand, had been meticulously preparing. After being forced to give up territorial gains from a previous war with China, due to pressure from Russia and other Western powers, Japan knew it had to be stronger. They poured resources into building a world-class navy, with ships constructed in Britain, and trained a modern, highly disciplined army. Negotiations failed. Russia was stalling, moving more troops into Manchuria while offering Japan little. The Japanese government, feeling cornered and seeing its window of opportunity closing, made a fateful decision. On the night of February 8, 1904, without a formal declaration of war, the Imperial Japanese Navy launched a surprise torpedo attack on the Russian fleet anchored at Port Arthur, a key Russian naval base in Manchuria. The attack was devastating, crippling several of Russia's best battleships. The Russo-Japanese War had begun. The initial battles were a stunning display of Japanese military prowess. On land, Japanese forces besieged Port Arthur. The fighting was brutal. A grim preview of the trench warfare that would define World War I. Japanese infantry charged into Russian machine gun fire and heavily fortified positions, suffering immense casualties but showing incredible determination. General Nogi Mersuke, the Japanese commander, became a symbol of this relentless, if costly, offensive. After months of bloody siege, the fortress of Port Arthur finally fell in January 1905, a huge strategic and psychological victory for Japan. Meanwhile, in the vast plains of Manchuria, the two armies clashed in some of the largest land battles the world had ever seen. The Battle of Mukden, in early 1905, involved over 500,000 soldiers. It was a chaotic and sprawling conflict. The Japanese, though often outnumbered, demonstrated superior tactics, better logistics, and higher morale. Their intelligence was better, their officers more adaptable. The massive Russian army, plagued by poor leadership, stretched supply lines across the single-track Trans-Siberian Railway, and low morale, was consistently outmaneuvered. The Russians were forced into a massive retreat, abandoning Mukden to the Japanese. While its army was being pushed back in Manchuria, Russia made a desperate gamble. Tsar Nicholas II ordered the Baltic Fleet, virtually the entire Russian navy in Europe, to sail halfway around the world to relieve the Far East and crush the Japanese fleet. This epic voyage of over 18,000 nautical miles was a logistical nightmare. It took them 7 months, sailing around Africa, plagued by mechanical failures, coal shortages, and the constant strain of the journey. The world watched, fascinated, as this armada steamed towards its destiny. Its destiny, as it turned out, was annihilation. On May 27, 1905, the Russian fleet entered the Tsushima Strait, between Korea and Japan, hoping to reach the Russian port of Vladivostok, but Japanese Admiral Togo Haihachiro was waiting for them. He had studied his opponent, his ships were faster, his gunners more accurate, and his tactics were revolutionary. In what became known as the Battle of Tsushima, one of the most decisive naval battles in history, the Japanese fleet utterly destroyed the Russian armada. Using a daring maneuver called crossing the T, Togo's ships could bring all their guns to bear on the leading Russian ships, while the Russians could only fire their forward guns. Within 24 hours, nearly the entire Russian fleet was sunk, captured, or scattered. Japan lost only 3 torpedo boats. The defeat at Tsushima was the final nail in the coffin for the Russian war effort. The news sent shockwaves through St. Petersburg, fueling social unrest and contributing to the Russian Revolution of 1905. The Tsar, facing collapse at home and humiliation abroad, had no choice but to seek peace. American President Theodore Roosevelt, concerned about the shifting balance of power in Asia, offered to mediate. Delegates from both nations met in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The resulting Treaty of Portsmouth, signed in September 1905, formally ended the war. Japan's victory was confirmed. It gained control of Korea, the southern half of Sakhalin Island, and key Russian interests in Manchuria. For his role in ending the conflict, Theodore Roosevelt was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, but the consequences of this war reached far beyond a treaty signed in New England. For the first time in the modern era, a non-European nation had defeated a great European power in a major war. This shattered the myth of white, European invincibility. Across Asia and the colonized world, from India to the Ottoman Empire, nationalists and independence movements were electrified. If Japan could do it, why couldn't they? The victory ignited a sense of pride and possibility throughout the continent. However, the war also had a darker legacy. It fueled Japan's own imperial ambitions, setting it on a path of aggressive expansionism that would ultimately lead to the invasion of China and the Pacific War, decades later. For Russia, the humiliating defeat exposed the weakness and corruption of the Tsarist regime, accelerating its downfall and paving the way for the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. The Russo-Japanese War was a true turning point. It was a conflict fought with modern battleships, machine guns, and rapid-fire artillery. It showcased the importance of logistics, intelligence, and morale. It redrew the map of power in the Far East, announced Japan's arrival as a world power, and sent tremors through the old imperial order that would be felt for the rest of the 20th century. It was a short, brutal war, but its echo is one that still resonates today. Thank you so much for watching. This is a fascinating period of history that truly shaped the world we live in. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button, and consider subscribing for more deep dives into the events that changed our world. Let us know in the comments what other historical topics you'd like to see covered. Until next time, stay curious.